What is up, everybody? Happy Monday. We're sounding the alarms. Georgia has just landed a 5-star commitment. Special edition of the Georgia Show. I'm Jake Rowe. He's Rusty Mansell. Georgia just landed 5-star, one of Robin's Edge, Isaiah Gibson. And Rusty, this didn't take long. He decommitted from USC less than a week ago, and here we are talking about him committing to Georgia after a weekend visit.
Everybody always asks me kind of what happened behind the scenes. If you want to get in detail on behind the scenes, go read the story I just posted on our message board on DawgsHQ. Kind of put this together the last probably 10 days. I'm looking at probably 10 or 12 days, and that's a pretty detailed kind of how this thing played out. And I'll say this, Jake: very rare does it happen to where a 5-star kind of controls the narrative, but each little step of the way, everything that he kind of wanted to unfold and how he wanted it brought and how it was going to be broken and all the news. Hey, man, tip of the cap to Isaiah Gibson, because how he wanted it laid out is how it happened the last 10 or 12 days and getting in this class at Georgia.
And what did we say? I mean, listen, it wasn't a good day over at DawgsHQ when Isaiah Gibson and Justice Terry committed to USC. I mean, I think a lot of people still felt like it wasn't over. But we made sure everybody kind of knew that Georgia was in such good shape before he made that surprise commitment to the Trojans. And honestly, probably got wrapped up in it. We've talked about it. I love LA too. All right. So he probably got a little bit wrapped up in that. But ultimately, decommits, and like you said, controls the narrative on the whole thing. Georgia's able to get him on campus for an unofficial visit this past weekend. And from there, I mean, it just really took off. What do you think it was? I mean, do you think it's a proximity to home type thing? Do you think it's a myriad of things? What played into it, do you think, as far as his decision?
Big deal close to home. Defensively, Georgia, what they have done the last 3 drafts, kind of he fits the mold with this thing. And Jake, I'll give you a stat. I don't want to butcher the young man's name. I think it's Jod Jackson. That was at Georgia, the 6'10" tackle from overtime, elite basketball player. His wingspan at 6'10" was 85 1/4 this past weekend at Georgia. Isaiah Gibson is 6'4". His wingspan was 85. This guy's got a 7-foot wingspan and a 6'4" frame. That's super damn freaky, my man. Yeah. I mean, you both together been doing it a long time, and it's hard to see. Measurements like that and go, we saw it. You and I both saw it in person. We were like, wait a minute, this guy's long. And I saw him when he was a sophomore covering Vic Burley. He has grown, got into this. One thing you like about Warner Robins is a tough-ass program, hard-nosed kids, tradition-rich. He'll be able to get coached hard. He's getting it done in high school. So when you look at Isaiah Gibson, he checks a lot of boxes, but, committed to USC. I say this too, Tennessee took a big swing last weekend. I made a note on our board. Tennessee had his mom up, had his aunt up, some family members that took a big swing, but it was a little bit too late. This young man was going to Georgia, and he stayed at home.
I want to kind of lay out a timeline for here because, I'm not as deep into the recruiting thing. I hadn't known who Isaiah Gibson was for a couple of years now, like you have, like Jake Roos and Jeremy Johnson have. But I went into that Under Armour camp back in February, Rusty, thinking, all right, I think Georgia's probably going to get this kid. And, now he's in, that's not to say, what's happened between now and then, but I thought kind of like, all right, this guy is probably not going to be your top edge in this class, but he's a really good edge. He's a guy that you can bring in, maybe ends up as a DN. He might end up as that down the road. We don't know how his body's going to develop, but then I saw him at that camp, and I saw that freaky length that you're talking about, and he ran really well at that camp. I believe maybe under a 4.7.
We saw him run that. We saw him run that hoop. We saw him run that hoop drill.
Yeah, it had some flex to him. And I was like, man, this cat is for real. And then all of a sudden his ranking shot up. I remember Charles Power and I had a good conversation watching him, at that and just kind of just seeing how Charles' mind works, knowing him as long as we've known him. You could tell that there were some aspects of his game that Charles liked, but that length just really stood out. And that day, Rusty weighed 238 pounds. And he was 263 on his official visit to Georgia. He's eating good on these official visits.
Hey, 4 weeks OVs will hurt anybody.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I just I tell you what, he's probably heavier right now than he's going to play his senior season.
No doubt.
You like to know that 6'4" guy that you're going to recruit, whether he ends up at edge or whether he ends up at D end or whether he ends up playing a hybrid role, you like to know that he can that he's a 270, 275 pounder. Like, you know that he's capable of getting there. And that's something that, you don't always get a chance to predict with these guys.
I saw Dan Lanning speak at I believe it was a Nike clinic 4 or 5 years ago. And he said the hardest people to recruit are the guys that are 265, 270, because there's only so many of those bodies, those type that can rush the passer and stand up and play with their hand down. You're talking to Ty Ingram Dawkins, you're talking to Malik Harris, and you're talking about a Trayvon Walker, all these types of players that are very hard to find because of that size. There's only so many of those. And when you get one like that in the state of Georgia, they've got another one in Justice Terry in the state of Georgia. Then you got Elijah Griffin. So those guys are probably going to slide down inside a little bit wherever they end up. But when you look at this young man right here, he's hard to find that body type to play that position, like the Alabama scheme under Nick Saban, the Kirby Smart scheme at Georgia, Glenn Schumann scheme at Georgia, Dan Lanning, all those guys that come out from under that tree that run that 3-4 and love that 5 tech, who also can stand up, play 7. It's just hard to find those body types, man. So when you get them, it's a big deal. You're on mute.
Palmer's producing tonight for us. Commitments just send me all into weirdness. But Palmer's producing for us tonight, and he's got this huddle film up, and I'm sitting here watching this.
I can long arm them.
You got these guys just hardcore kick sliding, trying to create some separation, and it's just so hard to do. He's in their chest in a moment.
Watch out! Watch his initial hit. You talk about heavy hands. You mentioned that last night. Watch how when he hits you, the strike, the knockback. And that's something you hear Trey Scott talk about. I go back and watch all these YouTubes on these guys, and you can find these clinics and hear these guys talk. And if you get 10 minutes of practice one day for watching, photos or whatever, Blue Moon, you hear Trey Scott and those guys come through your hips, come through your hands, be violent, and that's already naturally given with those guys. So, you can't state it enough, Jake. There's just not enough of these bodies to go around, man. You cannot miss on a guy like this in the state of Georgia.
Not at all. And I tell you what, man, the funny thing is Rusty, this is not the only addition for Georgia today. Georgia got Dontrell Glover earlier today, a 4-star offensive lineman, one time committed to Alabama. 2 guys that weren't committed to Georgia earlier this year and had committed to other schools. That was a big addition. That brings me to what's next. So we got a scheduled commitment tomorrow. I don't know quite yet if it's going to go Georgia's way. CJ Wiley's going.
That's a big one, man.
I tell you what, this is about to pick up, man. It's going to pick up big.
This class of 20, I tweeted this morning, Georgia started at 4. We knew that Glover was going. We also knew that Isaiah Gibson was going today. Georgia's already up to number 2. And tomorrow's a big one. And I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it, on live right now. Don't know exactly where he's going. I've made my comments on DawgsHQ about CJ Wiley and where I think he can end up. We will be on that all day tomorrow. Jeremy Johnson will be there for us. I may even go to that according, some things I have to do a meeting on Wednesday. So it's just one of those deals, man. This is another one of those can't miss elite wide receivers that I feel like's a great player, but man, you can't take away from tonight. Right now, this moment is Isaiah Gibson. This class of 2025 in Georgia. Georgia has waited a long time for 2025, and that's O-line and D-line, wide receivers and linebackers, man. And they got to kind of handle their business in state, because this is one you've been waiting on. Patrick Brown, I'll take this question from you. Take a victory lap. Ask on the board, heard Tennessee and UCLA tried to negatively recruit against Gibson. Here's what I'll say. They both probably knew they were behind. So I don't think that negative recruiting. I think they probably had certain angles toward Georgia. I'm sure Georgia's done that in the past with other schools. They're behind on somebody. So I don't know that negative recruiting actually helps anybody. If you do that, I don't think in the end you're going to win a lot of battles like that. They probably both knew they were behind and they had to take their shots there. But you see that, and then people say, hey, they probably knew where they were and they were behind on Georgia, and they had comments about Georgia, and he put that tweet out. So, negative recruiting happens. I'm not saying that Georgia probably don't do it at times, but you're just not going to win battles. You're just not going to do that. I know a Georgia assistant that I heard in a coaching clinic, and I won't use his name because I don't have the permission to use that name for that day. And he made a comment in a coaching clinic one time, I don't do it. I just never do it. I worry about this school. If that parent asks me a question, I want to be able to answer about this school, because in the end, now with a portal, you don't want to rub him by the wrong way, because you never know where you're going to be in a year or two if that young man might be at your school. So it's totally different recruiting. But I will say this, man, Chidera Deribe, that's a massive gift for him. He's not done. He's not done in this class. And, he's done a really good job at Georgia. I don't think he gets the credit, but he has turned into a damn alpha recruiter for Georgia. This was a big, big deal for him.
Got Julius Holly. They're at kind of the same area as CJ Wiley there. He's going to be committing later on this month. He's at Alpharetta. Is that right on Holly?
He's at Alpharetta, where CJ Wiley was. Ethan Barber was at Alpharetta. Yeah. Those two are in Milton now, but Julius is there. That's another name. I talked with Chad Simmons today. I feel like that's a guy that's probably in play for Georgia. Not ready to say he's going to end up at Georgia, but that is a name to know, along with Bryce Davis. DGD knows that as well. Our podcast buddy here is always in. There's a lot of decisions going to be made, I would say, the next 10 days. Some guys are either going to be in or they're going to be out, because some people are going to start taking some spots. I see the momentum, especially in 2025, in state. These kids are going to start texting and going, hey, I want in, man. But Georgia fans would be ecstatic if they go 2 for 2 right there with Isaiah Gibson on the right and Justice Terry on the left. Those are two badass men. They're football players, known them both for a while, and they're major targets. And Georgia got one tonight.
Mentioned Justice Terry. You mentioned Elijah Griffin, CJ Wiley. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. You got some offensive linemen still left out there. There's meat left on the bone, and it's Wagyu. Like it is A5 Wagyu beef.
There's some Wagyu.
That's
a good way to put it, man.
We were looking about 6 weeks ago, Rusty, and Georgia was, I think, 8th in the recruiting rankings. Now they're number 2 and climbing. Still, I think when you look at that top 3, top 4, they've got 2 or 3 commitments less than everybody else. So there's a lot of potential left in this class. Definitely in play for the nation's number 1 class.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And if you don't get number 1, I mean, you're going to finish 2 or 3. I mean, I think people now – I think Kirby Smart has earned 2 things: the confidence he's going to have a top recruiting class wherever it ends up. And I think what people that follow this day to day, a lot of people in these comments right here follow it day to day, trust the evals, man. I mean, what did we say the other day? 24 of 28 worked out for Georgia. And 2024 worked out for Georgia in that 2024 class. And the 4 guys that didn't were like Nate Frazier, who was running summer track, Marcus Harrison, who just committed and said, I'm done. It was guys all over the country. You know what I mean? So these guys, if they can get them in, they're working them out, and you got to trust the evals for Georgia. That's one thing I think the fan base has really come to, and they came to our message board and said, look, hey, if it's good enough for Georgia, then we trust Kirby and his staff.
Absolutely. And I thought it was interesting that Isaiah Gibson put out here, according to Hayes Foss, said, I'm going to that particular school. I'm pretty sure he's referencing his tweet that said everywhere I go, there's a particular school that everybody wants to talk about, and
have an opinion on. Yeah. And listen, you take that, and that's his right. But everybody that went into that visit probably knew they were behind Georgia, and I think that the notes I put up tonight, you go and look. It says behind the scenes for Isaiah Gibson. And you'll understand kind of how it unfolded, where it went, and the timeline of when I first started going, here we go. And I knew at that point, better start taking this serious, because, publicly he was saying one thing, but behind the scenes the ball was rolling toward Georgia, and it took about 4 weeks, and now he's in the class.
Absolutely. And, listen, one of the great things about coming over to DawgsHQ is you don't have to just read our board, and I'm not trying to bask in anything, but if you want to go over and read what other people are saying about the commitment you just landed, you can do that over at DawgsHQ. You get access to all the other boards and what everybody else is saying. It's a great time. Listen, you can use that. We've got a little code for you here, promo code UGA1. And you get 2 months for $1. That's 50 cents a month. You can't get anything for 50 cents anymore, but you can get the fastest growing, one of the best networks and one of the best sites out there over here at On3 and DawgsHQ, and we would love to have you. Stay tuned. We very much, for your sake, hope that we're with you again tomorrow after the CJ Wiley announcement. That's one. Georgia's definitely in the thick of that one, and we've reported on that one quite a bit, and not going to be a surprise at all. Not even a little bit of a surprise if Georgia ends up being the pick there. So we got that one coming. We got several more coming this summer. So it's going to be a busy summer, Rusty. It's gonna rival last year. I didn't think anything would, but it's going to rival what we dealt with last year.
June visits are turned into June decisions. That's not kind of how I worded it. I tried to word it to July decisions, but these kids have done it for so long. You know what I mean? They've done it for so long. It's July. It feels like it.
Hey, if you've been outside, it feels like July outside.
Man, I'll tell you what, man. It is. It's steamy. So yeah, you see Glenn Schumann, first day of dead period, pretty live for the Dogs, and that was a big deal for him and the whole staff, man. So big night. Thank you for everybody that is at DawgsHQ. Thank you, everybody that's here. We love having you here too, and like and subscribe to us. This is a big part of our brand too, and we love it. But thank you for everyone that has joined recently, especially in the last 24 hours. We've had a really good 24 hours. Thank you to everybody that's joined. Opportunity. Jake gave you the code right there, promo code. So, man, it's not slowing down. I said this, it is the dead period, but it doesn't mean recruiting is stopping. So these guys might be all over the world and on beaches and wherever, but trust me, that phone's in that hand and they're working.
Hey, Dog fans, congratulations. Big day today, bigger days to come, and we're going to have it covered for you. You guys have a great week. We'll see you.